Okay, so hello, good afternoon, thanks for coming to my talk. I know it's a long day, so let's make this funny, but still informative. I'm gonna talk as it's already called my talk, it's Digital Water, No Cloud. It's a research project I'm doing since 2015, and now it's in the 4th year. It always has some ups and downs concerning funding. Also my personal interests are changing. I don't know, it seems like we all, I really love the polymath here, picture again. Yeah, and today it's gonna be about the connections or the manifestations of the cloud. So it's about clouds in all kinds of forms. Exactly. So, and the motto for today is one that I don't know, I use it, I think, in everything I do. And so you can read it here. It's write, collect, and sort to understand what I have forgotten. And this is also the motto for the book. So, and the book is the first part. So I'm basically referring to this little book I did, the Cloud Atlas, in its 3rd volume. And better, thank you. Exactly, the 3rd volume of the Cloud Atlas, and it has the digital cloud inside for the first time. So a little outline of it, how it's gonna go. We have the introduction with why did I come up, why is there digital water, what can it be? Yes, she's an ecologist, and yes, she's an artist, so she made this funny project, but how is it really related, and what are the actually environmental impacts on our daily actions in cyberspace, and how is this analog world directly linked to the digital world, and how it actually clashes on the Earth's surface. Then we have the aim, that is exactly this. I wanted to log in real life, so I was searching for these manifestations of the cloud in form of data centers. Then we have some materials, and the method, this will be one place in Upper Austria that I'm talking about, in the little village of Kronsdorf, and then you will see how it's connected to the cloud. And Google, yeah. And about me, maybe I start with this. So I started out as a landscape architect. I was researching the human impacts on our landscapes. Then I was living in Portugal and thought, somehow all my projects, they're related to water. How can I link those two? And then I found a really nice master's program, so I became an applied limnologist, or also a freshwater ecologist. So since then, I'm living and traveling along rivers, trying to find the implications humans have on the riverscapes, but also on the other way around, how the river is actually influencing us. And this is also where this collecting process started. That I think since I'm a small child, I do water sampling. I was living next to a creek, and I got really related to it, and I always wanted to pick up stuff and to bring it with me. And then somehow those collections, they became too vast, too big to handle. Sometimes they got, I don't know, revived in my kids' room, and I couldn't enter my room because there was all kinds of animals crawling around. And then, I don't know, like 10 years after, I found myself studying and taking samples again. So I found maybe this is a relationship. Maybe that's what I want to do. So, and how this project started out was actually by a remark a friend of mine did, like this 5 years ago, that she said, now she's in Estonia, like almost the home place of the cloud, and like really a very connected country. Let's say this, like online. And she said, like, yeah, Christina, you should come again to watch the clouds, because we always watch clouds together. And then as I was like thinking about this, because she was sending it to me over Instagram, and how we're all connected, surfing, streaming along. And then I started thinking about these analogies that exist already in the digital with everything connected to water. And then I was finding, like, how does this immaterial, intangible cloud, basically, how can it be that it's not so light and actually has this huge connection to the Earth's surface? And then I was checking the basics, how the first cloud networks were defined, and here you can see a visualization of MetaHaven. It's a Dutch design office, and they took from an MIT paper from in 1996, where they already started to draw the first cloud. It was a system network and linked with an IP address and the routers in between. So they already used these pictures, and just like 10 years later or more, the real cloud started to head off. And this is also where already the first time this analog meets the digital space. And exactly, and then there was like one really important thing that also comes back to the collecting part, that I'm trying to collect things and hoard, and then I put them in the cloud, and then it's like, okay, it has zero impact, but I also cannot touch it anymore. So I felt like my hard drive broke at this time, and I said, okay, shit, everything's gone. Then I have like this little backup on the cloud, but it's not all of it. Then I was more researching the etymology of the word digital. So it comes from the digitus, Latin for the finger, and this was exactly what I'm trying to do with this project. So I was trying to touch with my finger the cloud. How does it work, and how can I collect these pieces? So here you see the property of a future data center to be digital realty, and it was these manifestations, and that the cloud, it actually became a body related to water as ours. So how can I say it's related on water? It's like 3 motifs I'm playing with. And let's maybe take my pen. I have it here. Okay, so the three connections with the cloud are the data centers are kind of they are the factories of the internet and the factories of the cloud where it's stored. So most of the data centers, as we're in the time of green computing, they're also based on water in 2 ways. So on the one side, it's water cooled by using water as a cooling liquid. So at the moment, more and more of the cloud centers are changing to this. And the other thing is that they use sustainable energy, like green energy. And this is often coming from hydropower plants. So then there's this really nice quote by John Durham Peters, who wrote a book that is called The Marvelous Clouds. And he says, there's as little as marvelous as the sea, the sky, or another person's presence. And this is like kind of, for me, was really nice comparison, how it's also working with our communication, why we constantly want to be logged in and online, and this login in real life, most of the time it's about communication and interaction with each other. And John Durham Peters, he writes in his book like really nicely that it talks about early telecommunication, and there's the telephone line was connecting 2 families that before they were just it was between Israel and Palestine, so they could not talk to each other for ages. And the thing was, when they got the phone finally, they had 1 day in the month, they always called each other. But the only thing they talked about was the weather. So then they said, yeah, it's rainy, no, it's sunny. And they never actually said what's really going on. It just was to hear the other one is still there. And I think it's a lot what is happening online at the moment. It's like, okay, you're still here. So then one thing now is like this clash of words is a definition, because I'm using a lot of the vocabulary from the World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, who is since the end of the 19th century, every 20 years, brings out a cloud atlas, an atlas that shows all possible formations of clouds that you can see in the sky. And why I'm projecting it is most of the most important part is in the very end, that actually it fits perfectly for the cloud as we know it, as the platform storing our data. So it says, however, a specific cloud does not permanently consist of the exact same particles. Technically speaking, a cloud is not even an object, but an area in the atmosphere reaching oversaturation. So this is kind of like the cloud also works, because we're constantly uploading, downloading data, we're streaming. It's never the same shape, you cannot grasp it, but it still has some place, and a place of origin in this case. And this is how the project tries to deal with both analogies. So here we see different kinds of cloud formations. And then we come to the digital cloud. So I was trying to come closer to it. How do I find it? So I was starting my search, as most of the research starts with Google. And I was Googling for data centers all around, and then I found this really nice option that you can go with Google Street View, you can just enter the data center, which you usually cannot. So I was, also 2 years ago, I was in California, in the Silicon Valley, in the base, like where the motherland of the cloud and the internet, and it was funny because I was traveling with my mother, and we looked up where are all the data centers, and we got 2 times almost arrested. And the other one was, my mom was to cover up because she had to stand in front of the data centers, so it looks like we're tourists just taking family pictures. And then it even happened that like one case, we just didn't find the data center the second time. So I drove by it, second time was not there anymore, the sign. I have no idea why, maybe it was like Fata Morgana. But here you even can find a stormtrooper inside the data center, so pretty cool. And then here is, as I'm talking exemplar, as an example, I took the tech company Google, and here you can see Google's data centers. And what becomes immediately visible is they're all using clouds in their pictures, and most of them have water. So this is the important part when, for instance, Google decides where to put their future data centers. They also go back to the map, check where is their freshwater access, or also water, like sea access. And most of the time, those are in the northern hemisphere. And the remarkable part about it is that all these options, they work very much like back in colonial times. So there has to be a political stable country. It should have not too much effect on the climate change that is not happening. And so as you can see in this map, everything is more above, and they're trying to make all over this network. And the other thing that this network is strongly depending on is still a lot of cables. So as we heard before in the talk, you can just cut the cable and there will be no more internet, even though everything is in the cloud. Okay. And then after Googling around and being like, oh, I was in Norway, then I was in Finland, then I was in the US, only on Google Maps now, but still. Then I found like, okay, maybe there's also a data center that could work for me in Austria. So I found a lot of very nice data centers in Vienna that also are housing the cloud. But one of the most remarkable stories, and this is also the example I'm taking out, which is the first entry of the 3rd volume of the International Cloud Atlas. It's the cloudiest of clouds, the Kronstoff cloud. And it looks like this. Not very cloudy, indeed, but it's, Google bought like 13,000 hectares of land in this little village in Upper Austria, which is just, I grew up, there's a river next to it flowing. Let's try to point, oops, okay, no. So if I go here, here's the beautiful river. If you imagine this would be a river, the river Enns is flowing there. And I just grew up on the other side of the river. And I thought, that's interesting. I feel very related to this landscape. It's a pre-alpine landscape with a lot of fields and agriculture. So they bought this piece of land. It's all farmland so far, to build a future data center there. That happened in 2008, and so far, almost nothing has happened. So if you go to the spot, it looks like this. And the only thing they did until now is that they built this beautiful road with also access plans. So this is the data center, so this is actually the cloud. And so they built this and 3 big roads that lead actually to the property. And at the moment there's basically runners running along the street, and also there's a lot of dogs playing around. And then the other thing they did, and this they immediately did after they purchased the land, is where I put the cursor now. They planted trees. And why they did plant trees is as a compensation area for the area that it will pave, because they will seal land. So Earth's surface will be gone to house the cloud, because there will be a lot of concrete if they build a data center. Which by most of the time, data centers look super boring, like a Walmart. Just comment. But here we have this very beautiful forest, and this is also the only part of the property that has a fence. You cannot enter it. Makes no sense. So you imagine this should be here, but it's not. And then the other thing that happened is the city of Konstorf, they got like super excited. So right now it's like really hard. I wanted to get an interview with the mayor, and it was like he reclined me like 5 times, like, I'm not gonna talk about this fucking cloud anymore. It's like, no way. And I was like, why? It's really interesting. It's like, no, there was all these expectations, and we hired a Canadian kindergarten teacher so our kids can speak English when the cloud arrives and they can start working for the cloud. Then they even got like, since years they wanted to build new housing and they never could, but then now they got somehow got it through in the city council or village council. So they also built like these new house blocks. They're just empty, and then they have this. So it's kind of a really tragic story, and I forgot to put it inside, but like 2 years ago they also, as in Austria, you might know the Fasching, the carnival, it's quite a big thing. So every day at their carnival route that they have in Konstorf, it's like the elderly people of Konstorf are actually dressing up as data centers on the truck. And it fits really well to the talk before, because going through on the carnival train, it's a tractor. It's really nice. I like it a lot when I saw it. So all these beautiful, colorful tubes, because also there is this reference to the internet as a system of tubes, which was found out it's wrong. But then still there's all these tubes transporting, like really tubes inside the data center transporting the water. And in a Google data center, for instance, the markings of red and blue is for the warm and the cool water. And this is one point that is quite important for me, and also this is where my research is going on now. And as a freshwater ecologist, is what actually happens to the water that is extracted, put into the data center, and then let out again. Because it's cooled, so before they can take it in, it's cleaned, then they cool it down, it will be warmed, and then before they let it out again, it's cooled again. But this is a process that has quite a change on an atomic level already for the water, and so far nobody actually looked, or I didn't find it, but at the moment we're looking at what is the impact on the fish ecology there. So if you have for instance, you take the Googleplex, and it's in California, and they have already really a problem with the water. So you go there and you take out this water that is already quite polluted. It will have a huge impact on it. And so now the idea is, and what we're researching is the changes in the DNA of the fish species. And also there's a nice example, because I visited also some properties of NASA. And there they say, okay, we already have cyborg species. So what we are now claiming is that also the cloud produces cyborg species. It's the fish that are changing throughout the changed water, how you say, like water combination, and like how it is put together. And so there will be more and more cyborg species, and this time it's not coming from, because at the NASA they told us, okay, we send these rockets out into space, and then they clash, particles come down to the Earth's surface, and the alligators there, for instance, they eat it. And then you say, okay, you become more and more outer space. And with these species, they actually breeding on the water that is going through the clouds, so they're becoming more and more clouds. There's one thing. And the other thing, this is one of the data centers I tried to visit with my mother, but we could not because we were no US citizens and then far away from looking like more funny investigators than anything else. And yeah, this is was the one part, and the other one that is really important in this whole project is like this, what the environmental impacts of our online activities. So this constant streaming, what does it actually do? So right now, we're working on a digital climate agreement, how we can implement our daily actions on the internet, and also what could be the implementation on a bigger scale, like what could countries say, and also like it's above countries, so it's a geopolitical issue. And this is what we're working on right now. And also how could be a grading system, so there's like the carbon trade, for instance, or a carbon offset. And then it's a lot about, okay, I can say now that you pay a company so your homepage can go green, but what does it mean, green, in this sense? And like the sustainability of our choices that are not only in our daily lives, but also our daily lives include the online actions. But this is one of the important parts. Here's one small picture of the beautiful Kronsdorf property. And then I have one other quote from Bob Ross. He's a really talented painting teacher, maybe some of you know. It's like, if you learned how to make a cloud, your time is not wasted. So, and this is the end of the book. And thank you very much for your attention.